The echo of boots slamming against the marble floor shattered the silence like thunder rolling through a cathedral. Each step was sharp, heavy, deliberate, the rhythm of finality. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, carving pale beams across the vast military hall where shadows gathered like vultures. On the cold floor, a shattered medal lay in pieces, its ribbon torn, its silver dulled by dust and humiliation. The air was thick with judgment and whispers, every sound slicing deeper than any blade could. Standing in the center, trembling but unbroken, was General Arya Holt, a woman once hailed as the backbone of her nation's pride. Her uniform, once pristine and adorned with stars of honor, was now smeared with blood and dirt. The same men who had once saluted her now stood smirking in a semicircle, their laughter a low, poisonous hum that filled the air with cruelty. Betrayal stung sharper than the open wound along her arm. 30 years of devotion, discipline, and sacrifice, erased in one orchestrated moment. If you're watching this on Kindness Vibes, and you believe that true strength lies in compassion, second chances, and standing tall when the world turns its back on you, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Because stories like this remind us, the human spirit doesn't break, it bends, it burns, and it rises again. Outside, the sun blazed over Fort Raventon, its white walls gleaming with indifferent beauty, as though mocking the pain beneath. Arya's boots hit the ground one last time as she walked away from the hall that had once echoed her commands. The tribunal's words still burned in her ears, stripped of rank. Guilty of negligence. But Arya knew the truth. The failed mission that took innocent lives wasn't her doing, it was sabotage. A trap carefully set by those who couldn't bear the thought of a woman commanding their ranks. They had planned her downfall, and they succeeded, for now. Her medals were gone, her title stolen, her dignity bruised. But the soldier within her, that relentless flame, refused to die. For days that followed, Arya lived in the gray space between disgrace and survival. She left the capital and found herself in a small coastal town where the sea always looked weary, and the wind carried the scent of forgotten dreams. She rented a small room above an old fisherman's workshop, the kind of place where walls whispered stories of simpler, lonelier lives. In the mornings, she helped mend nets for a few coins. In the evenings, she sat by the window overlooking the docks, staring into the horizon where the sea met the sky, her hands tracing the scars on her wrist, silent reminders of a life once lived for honor. There was only one photograph she kept, a picture of her daughter, Leah. It was creased and faded, taken years before the world had turned cruel. Leah had left home after a bitter argument, saying she was tired of living in the shadow of a soldier rather than being raised by a mother. Arya had written letters for years, dozens of them, but none were answered. That silence haunted her more than the tribunal ever could. At night, when the waves struck the rocks and the wind rattled her window, she whispered Leah's name, not as a soldier, but as a mother still praying to be forgiven. Then came the morning that would change everything. It was early, fog rolling off the sea like a soft blanket of ghosts, when Arya woke to shouting near the docks. She stepped outside to see a group of local men, thick jackets, heavy boots, arrogance etched into their faces, surrounding a teenage boy. He was trembling, clutching a torn satchel to his chest. They accused him of stealing, though his tear-streaked face swore innocence. Arya recognized the tone, that merciless roar of mob cruelty. It was the same sound she had once heard in that grand hall, the same scorn that had tried to strip her soul bare. Before she even thought, she moved. Her steps were measured, her voice steady as she called out to them. They turned, sneering. One man spat in the dirt and said, "Go home, old lady. This isn't your fight." But Arya didn't flinch. Her gaze, cold, unwavering, froze him mid-step. When he shoved her, something inside her snapped. The pain, the humiliation, the silence, all of it surged to the surface. In a flash of movement, she caught his wrist, twisted it, and sent him crashing into the sand. The others lunged, but her body remembered. Every drill, every reflex honed over decades, came alive. The fight was quick, silent, brutal. She moved like a storm unleashed, graceful, precise, unstoppable. By the time the chaos settled, the men lay groaning in defeat, staring up at her in disbelief. She didn't say a word. She simply turned and walked away, the boy safe, the town's whispers beginning before the dust even settled. That woman fought like a general. In a place where no one had known her name, Arya became a story whispered at every table, every street corner. Days later, a journalist arrived, curious about the mysterious woman who had stood up to a gang alone. When her past came to light, when the truth of who she was reached the world again, everything changed. People who had forgotten her name now searched for it. Former soldiers, citizens, strangers, messages of respect poured in. And among them came a letter. It was from Leah. After years of silence, only 6 words were written in trembling ink. "Mom, I'm proud of you again." Arya read the line over and over, her heart unraveling in quiet sobs. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was the first bridge rebuilt over years of silence. And sometimes, one fragile bridge is enough to cross back into life. Soon after, the military reopened her case. Evidence surfaced that proved the mission failure she was accused of had been sabotaged from within. The very men who mocked her that day had orchestrated it. Arya was summoned not as the disgraced officer they once condemned, but as the woman who had survived their betrayal. The courtroom fell silent as she entered. Her once torn uniform was now spotless, medals restored. The same men who had sneered at her lowered their eyes, their arrogance stripped bare. Arya stood before them, not as a symbol of revenge, but as a testament to resilience. Her voice didn't tremble. She spoke of loyalty, of leadership, of truth, of the countless unseen sacrifices made by those who choose honor over hatred. And by the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Weeks later, as the sun set over the base she once commanded, General Arya Holt stood once again before her troops. The courtyard, once heavy with the echoes of betrayal, now thundered with applause. She looked out over the sea of faces, men and women who saluted not a rank, but a spirit reborn. The flag behind her rippled in the golden light as her voice broke, quiet but strong. "Honor isn't given by rank," she said softly. "It's proven by how we rise when we're broken." The crowd stood still, many weeping, as Arya lifted her chin. The past no longer defined her, it had forged her. And as the final rays of sun kissed the medals on her chest, she whispered to herself, they didn't know who they were trying to break. But now they do. If this story of courage, redemption, and the unbreakable human spirit touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Vibes. Your support helps stories like this reach souls who need hope the most. And before we end, tell us in the comments, what does rising again mean to you? Because for Arya Holt, rising again wasn't about reclaiming power, it was about reclaiming peace. As the waves crashed softly in the distance and the flag fluttered against the twilight sky, Arya stood tall, not in triumph, but in quiet grace, living proof that even in a world determined to break you, dignity can still bloom from the ashes.